Hello, welcome to my channel. So today I think I want to share a story from when I was really depressed, catatonic depression, and I am remembering that moment where I just felt like I couldn't get out of my situation at all. Like I didn't even have money to buy food. I didn't have money to buy medicine or any kind of things possible. And one of the way that I entertained myself when things got really bad is like physically as well, but mostly like mentally. I had these glimmers. If you don't know what glimmers are basically uh, triggers, but positive triggers. So glimmers are the opposite of triggers. Triggers usually send you into this flight and fight response, while glimmers send you into this hopeful state of being. And my glimmers at that time were very simple. It was just simply me paying for my coffee at a Starbucks, because Starbucks is where I have been going for like my whole two-third of my life in Australia. It has nothing to do with, brandism or elitism or anything like that. It's just, a coffee shop that in my head, if I buy coffee, I go to Starbucks. So I had these glimmers, basically just these triggers, these visions of this me just paying for my coffee, and the feeling is ease. The feeling is being at ease, being light. It's as if that everything is okay. It's just an ordinary gesture, but for me at that time in a really dark space, that was the light, which was an ordinary life where I can just go and have my coffee. And even though I don't drink coffee much now, I'm actually weaning off it for the longest time now. I haven't had it in a very long time, but I had to replace it with matcha. So maybe that's a downside because matcha has a more powerful caffeine content. But the point was, I guess when you are at the dark spot, it's really hard for anything or anything good, anything light to penetrate you, to penetrate your mind, to have that your heart to accept that you can break out from that space, from that state of being. And having that glimmers, it's a very simple glimmers, and it was a hopeful moment. It was as if that I can extend my hand outward and try to reach it, and I'm trying to reach it every time. And it does give me a little bit of hope back then, because I every time I have maybe a spare like $6 or $7, I would go to Starbucks and try to emulate the feeling and the vision that I saw in my mind. And it would probably only last like a few seconds, but I guess my intention was to reinforce the vision and the glimmers that I had accepted in my brain for it to come true more often. And it did. Eventually, it did. And now we are at the state of a very different type of suffering. But it was no longer in that state of suffering where I was completely inactive and completely catatonic, unable to function, unable to do anything, because my body was just too run down and my mind wasn't functioning properly. Um, so the glimmers were really the only speck of hope that I had back then. And with everything that is full in chaos, I only remember that moment, because now, even a few years later, I remember that, but I don't remember much of the chaos. I don't remember much of the darkness. I know I went through a lot of suffering. I know I went through a lot of that. And I think my suffering was also self-inflicted. It's because I'm unable to suffer the way normal people suffer, because normal people would suffer because of other people, meaning like they would have to give way to other people, meaning like if you want to get something, usually there is a scenario, you have to go to this person and then you have to be really nice to them so that you can get what you want from this person. You have to act a certain way. There's a lot of that in our society, that we have to act differently so that we can get what we want. We have to appease people. And I think by that stage I was just too lost in my delusion of the world. I was really didn't want to interact with the world. I was just so determined to make it on my own, which I still do now, but I think now is worse than back then. But that's a different story. So I think by having these glimmers, it's actually very helpful, because you are pushing yourself forward. You are focusing on this one positive things when there are another million of things that don't work out for you, and you have to focus on this light, on this particular one thing that makes you feel like you are at ease, that makes you feel like this is normal, this is great. And I guess without knowing it, I was practicing Abraham Hicks principle of, if 10 events happen to you and only one is good, focus on the one that is good and not focus on the nine that is bad. And I think I was doing that at that time out of necessity, and also out of not having any other choice, because if I opted for other, because the intensity of darkness was just too much, that everything is dark, so you can't, and the only thing that is different is this particular vision, this simple vision of just purchasing a coffee, feeling like I do have the money to buy coffee, I do have the money to just sit here and drink my coffee and read a book, and I have that moment. And for the longest time I tried to evoke that feeling by doing the act, but of course, like, it never really identical to the glimmers that I had. And I think the purpose of glimmers, personally, is for us to experience it in our nervous system, that a possibility of a new reaction is possible. Like, your body is capable of feeling lightness, of feeling ease, of feeling freedom, of feeling as if that you are okay, that you are abundant. And I think it is a blessing from other people, maybe not from other people, but from, maybe if you believe in spirituality, maybe from your guides and stuff like that. And it's necessary, because without that you're just a blob of negativity. Also, I think in neuroscience, you can find out that your brain is capable of balancing things. Meaning, like, if if you are in a torture mode, I think I've heard this from somewhere. So I never had this experience. Well, actually, I do. I'll share it with you in a few seconds. But I heard this story from someone else. When you are being tortured, for example, usually your brain will try to balance it, because it's just so severe. It's severe and it's extreme. So it needs a counterbalance of that experience. And usually that's when religious experience comes in, when you see saint, when you see Holy Spirit, when you see Jesus. because your brain is trying to counteract the horrible things that is happening to you. And you've heard probably from a lot of people who suffered from extreme abuse that they dissociated. So I think that's one of the counter mechanisms of the brain or your nervous system, so that you don't die. Basically, you don't black out or you don't participate in the world. It's like the brain will always make the brain and nervous system always going to make sure that you survive. And I think, even though it's probably not the best option to do that, it's in a way it's reassuring, because it means like you can have a place to escape, even if it's mentally. But then again, everything is mental. And that's comforting. So my story about that bit where the pain and stuff, I remember had when I had this thing here, when I split my chin basically, and I didn't have money to go to the doctor. I didn't have even have the energy to go anywhere because I didn't have money to buy food, let alone to go to the doctor to get it sorted. Like, even though like it's free here, but I don't have the energy to go to the doctor. Like, my mental aptitude was so chaotic, and I just didn't have any I just didn't have anything to go on anyway. And then, because I didn't have anything, so I just decided to tape my chin up, which probably will make me suffer for my whole life afterwards for unknown consequences. But I taped my chins up with surgical tapes because I had a surgery a few years back, and I still have surgical tapes left over. So I just taped it. And you can see it's a junky job that is still like there. And I think after about, I might have fractured that. I don't know if it has healed or not. But a few days afterwards, I was in cloud nine. I was in cloud nine. I think like I had a natural morphine injected into my nervous system. I was literally feeling like I was walking on clouds. I think it was coming from this particular scar because it cut really deep. Like, my skin was like opening like a different mouth. It's like, hello, like I have two mouths because the skin was hanging out. And so I think it was serious enough for it to triggers my brain to say, hey, you are in pain. Like, there is a part of our body that has been cut and exposed and is in pain, and therefore we need to do something about it. And I was in cloud nine for a good 2 days. I was walking and I felt so light. I felt as if I was dancing on the cloud. I wasn't even exaggerating. And I realized that it probably because of the scars, probably because of the accident. And this is my theory, of course. And I realized back then, it's like, oh, the body will always make sure that you get the reciprocal chemical or activity that you need for your brain, for your body to survive, to keep going. And I think at that time I just got lucky because it was a physical accident, so it has to be uh, a physical response as well. And I think I've heard like other cases where it happens as well, and I think people get really confused by it. But mine happened about 3 days after the accident, so I think that was a good time lapse there that makes it easier for me to kind of figure out what was happening. And also, it made me realize like, I understand now why people take drugs to get that feeling of being high and being, because I did not do anything different. I did not have money to make it to, to buy drugs, let alone like to buy like illicit drugs. Um, so I was just high on natural painkillers from my brain. And I realized, like, oh, this is why people take drugs, because when you have this chemical running in your brain, in your system, you definitely feel like you are untouchable and you can fly, basically. It was like that intense. So after that, I also realized, like, oh, maybe this is why people cut themselves. Like, you know how some people trigger warning self-harm, trigger warning self-harm, like how people like cut themselves. Like, you can see like people who does this. And I get it. I think I get it at that time, because even though I did not do this on purpose, it was an accident. I get that morphine kicked in my brain, in my nervous system, like 2, 3 days afterwards. But my system is quite laggy, but most normal people probably have it in an instant. So, if you have like a physical pain, your brain, or like a cut, like your brain probably will send you a painkiller chemical straight away. So I think so back then I realized, oh, maybe this is why people cut themselves, so that they can get this bit, the painkiller bit, the cloud 9 bit, because that basically calm your system down. That was like natural drugs, and I was like, wow. I get why people become a drug addict, like, for sure. I never experienced it afterwards because I didn't get any cut in my body anymore, like that serious. But yeah. Anyway, that was good times. Not really. But I think what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter how dark your world is, how heavy your world is. I feel we have a system to help you get through it. If it's not, it is in your body, it is in your brain, it is in the spiritual realm, probably, either in terms of glimmers or a natural painkiller. Um, Even though it sounds very small and it feels like it's insignificant, it is there. It is there for us. It is there to help us move forward. And hopefully, one day, maybe we will figure out what it all means. Maybe that one step is enough for us to keep going and to reach somewhere where we like to settle down and stay. And maybe that's enough. But glimmers and natural painkillers are the way to go. You don't need to buy anything. It's cheap too. Hey, I'm cheap, man. And I feel like even if you don't have any faith anymore about the world and about the religion, if you are such a, an ex religion members or an ex cult members, even, just know, like, things, you have everything inside of you. You have everything that you need to get you moving forward. And even if it's in terms of glimmers or your own natural painkillers, maybe in your world it's in terms of people. Maybe people come to you and maybe people be very kind to you and people just randomly being very nice to you. And maybe that will be your glimmers. And I think it's not an accident. It's definitely something that real, and we have to keep moving forward to keep us moving forward. And yeah, hopefully one day all of us will get where we need to go. And that's that. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. My name is Valerie. I am a digital creator, a solopreneur here. I am based in Sydney, Australia. If you want to check out my other works on the internet, check out and the links and descriptions in the box below. And if you're in Australia, ING Australia has a $125 bonus cash for new customers, and you can get all of the details in the links and terms and conditions in the description box below. It's only until 31st of March 2025, so hopefully you watch this before then, and I will see you guys later. Bye everyone.